And as we realize God's presence is present here, everywhere, all time, all place. In that awareness, let us pray. Father, Mother God, we give thanks for this opportunity to be aware of your presence in our lives, in this moment, in every moment. We give thanks. And we hold that attitude of gratitude for all of those who have been afflicted with illness, with dispossession, with relationship issues. We hold each and every in our hearts, seeing them lifted and transformed by the awareness of the presence of your love. We give thanks that we are aware in this moment to offer thanks. And for this, together we say, Amen. Well, I am that. We've been exploring the effects of the shadow and our avoidance of the shadow, of our challenges with the shadow. I've been using a work by Debbie Ford, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, and another work by Robert Johnson, who is, now I'm not sure of that name. Anyway, Owning Your Shadow. The process of identifying those aspects that are in your shadow is really the revelation of what is contained in your shadow can be identified by those things that bother us, those things that upset us. When I was working for Columbine Systems decades ago, we were having some issues in our management group. Could you close that door? Because I'm sure the conversation out there is going to occur, and but do keep it down, please. Okay, so when I was working for Columbine Systems, we were a small company, a small software company that worked with radio and television stations, installing back office software. And our client base was literally worldwide. It was one of the, I think only 2 or 3 companies that was doing that work at the time. So we were going all over. Our management staff, the 5 people of the management group, were on the road constantly. And so communication was a challenge because we would be on the road and then back in the office, and then our fellow manager would be out on the road while we were in the office. And so there were opportunities for conflict to arise just because of lack of communication between the several of us. And there were other reasons for the conflict to arise, but that was one of the issues. But the president of our company was a forward-thinking guy, and so he decided that we all needed to have psychotherapy. And actually, it was more psycho-counseling rather than psychotherapy, but it was done by a psychiatrist out near Central Park. And he was a Jungian psychologist. And one of the things that I was introduced to was this idea of the shadow. And his point was, and he kept coming back to it, with me, I don't know what happened in the other managers' counseling sessions, but with me, he kept coming back to this idea that the things that irritate me are the things that I have pushed into my shadow. And this idea was stark to begin with. I was not endorsing that idea, but I kept participating because I had to. It was part of my job to undergo this psycho-counseling. And we had, over the course of time, we had, I don't know, half a dozen, maybe more sessions with this fellow. And it became clear that, yes, that is true, that the things that irritate me are the things that I am seeing that is hidden in my shadow that is being revealed by someone else. So the work with the shadow is work that can be very healing. I'm not sure that I was healed at the time, but the idea was certainly planted. Debbie Ford, in her book, Dark Side of the Light Chasers, talks about the importance of taking the things that irritate us and working with that to the point of not just revealing, but also owning. Last week I talked about the Golden Buddha. That was, actually the Golden Buddha was created some 700 years ago, maybe 800 years ago. They're not sure of its genesis, but it was 200 years ago, 250 years ago. It was covered in a terracotta because there was an advancing army. The monastery that had this Golden Buddha stood 9 feet tall. I mean, it was a huge statue. They did not want the oncoming army, the Burmese army, to steal this statue, so they covered it in terracotta and broken glass to make it look well, to hide its golden nature. But the idea was that when the Golden Buddha was discovered in 1955, it was being moved from one monastery to another. A crack occurred in the terracotta. The gold was shown to be underneath the terracotta. It was symbolic of what we do with the stuff that we don't want to own, that we disown, that we reject, that we ignore. Those aspects that doesn't fit our persona, we push them into the shadow. So there is that revelation of us, the persona, and then there is that hidden part of us, the shadow. And the hidden part of us, the shadow, the things that are sitting there, if you will, dormant, at least latent, they are actually the source of our healing, the source of our integration. And so Debbie Ford makes the point that owning those aspects of self is an important aspect of integration, of enlightenment. And so we had a song this morning, I Am That I Am. It is a phrase that comes out of Genesis. And let's see if we can get to it. There, whoop, out of Exodus, sorry. Moses said to God, "If I come to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your ancestors has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' what shall I say to them?" God said to Moses, "I am that I am," or "I am who I am." He said further, "Thus you shall say to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" God also said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the Israelites, 'The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this my title for all generations.'" Now the interesting thing about this, not only is that phrase, "I am that I am," that has bedeviled theologians for these many millennia, but the idea of what is your name in ancient lore, it's revealed that the true nature, one's true nature, is revealed in one's true name. And so what Moses is asking God here in the context of that, what is your true nature? He wants to know what is your true nature, and so he's asking, what is your name? What should I tell them? And so in the response that God offers in this account in Exodus is that my nature is, I am that I am. Now the interesting thing is in the ancient Hebrew, not so in the modern Hebrew, but in the ancient Hebrew, punctuation did not exist. They did not know this thing about pauses and sentence ends, and it was all in context. You had to understand when the sentence end with the end of a phrase. Okay, there was no periods, there were no commas. So if we look at this phrase, so there is, I am that I am, with no punctuation. If we want to understand what that phrase is in our present mindset, we might want to add some punctuation to that. So there is one offer. There, I am that I am. I exist. That I am. I am that I am. It's kind of like the old Popeye commercial, I am yet I am, and that's what I am. So I exist. And then this, I am that I am. And you could put the comma after the first I or after the second I, but those really don't make sense. These are kind of I guess these are the three alternatives with two punctuations examples. But I am that I am. Now, in Debbie Ford's depiction of the healing process, she says that it is important that when you identify an aspect of shadow, that you own that shadow, that you declare that aspect of shadow to be you. Okay? She has an example of a young lady in her mid-30s named Morgan attending her workshop one time. And Morgan was really at death's door. She had stomach cancer and she was weak. She could hardly imagine going to a workshop at this stage of her life because she saw that she was close to death. But she decided that to go ahead and have the workshop. And in the workshop, she revealed that one of her biggest burdens was her mother. Her mother was inattentive. Her mother was abusive. Her mother was not your stereotypical mother. She was quite the opposite. And she hated her mother for that. She, in fact, regarded her mother as insane. And she kept saying, my mother is insane. And as the opportunity to talk about your situation arose in the workshop, she kept saying, my mother, she's insane, she's crazy. And so Debbie confronted her with that. She said, what if you're insane? And Morgan said, I'm not insane. That's my mom. I'm not insane. And she kept working with Morgan. She said, what if you're insane? Can you just accept the possibility that you're insane? No, that's my mother. Work with that, she says. Work with that. Work with that. Stand in front of the mirror tonight and declare yourself to be insane so that you can own that aspect of shadow, because that aspect of shadow is true, that it is real, it is part of you. Integrate that, and perhaps you can heal this relationship with your mother. So Morgan went home that night, and she stood in front of the mirror. She kept declaring to herself, I am insane. I am insane. I am insane. I am insane. She came in the next morning and she said to Debbie Ford, she said, you know, I can find instances where I have acted insanely. I can see how you could say that I am insane because on several occasions I've demonstrated insanity. And you know what? When I realized that, a weight was lifted from my shoulders. Well, the workshop completed, and Debbie hadn't heard from Morgan for several months, but she received a letter from Morgan. And she says, you know, your therapy with me, for me to declare myself insane, was truly removing a burden. I understood more about who my mother was and why she acted that way. And she says, you know what? I've gone to the doctor and my tumor is in remission. It is shrinking. Well, it turns out that over the course of the next year, the tumor disappeared and Morgan was vibrant, alive. She was looking forward to the rest of her life. Cancer has been called the disease of the burdens, where many people have shown remission from that disease when they have actually healed some aspect of their life, not the cancer itself, but relationships in particular, relieving stress. And so this idea that there are aspects of self that the persona does not want to have, that are relegated to the shadow, that then become those hot buttons that create situations in our lives where we are responding in an adverse way, an unreasonable way, to stimulation from events, stimulation from relationships, stimulation from aspects that seem to be out of our control. Yet dealing with the shadow and working with the shadow is an important part of resolving the issues in our own lives. There is if we look at this graphically, we have the persona, that aspect which we reveal to the world, and we have the shadow, that aspect which we have rejected, we have ignored, we have denied. The integration that is recommended by Jungian psychologists in general is the integration of the persona and the shadow to bring these aspects closer and closer, to reveal what is contained in the shadow and to heal what is in the shadow by owning what is in the shadow. It's not that you have to behave in the way that something in the shadow dictates, but rather you need to recognize that that is part and parcel of who you are. And this integration process that occurs as you more and more own that aspect of shadow, you come into a greater and greater degree of integration. And Ford will say that it is only when you own all of your shadow that you are open to enlightenment. Now it's interesting that in this area here, we have the persona, we have the shadow, and we have this area here where we have integrated what seem to be paradoxes. That it is in this area that we are elevated, that we become more inspirited, that we become more empowered, that we become more holy. And in fact, in the medieval Christian symbology, iconography, there is this thing that surrounds the Christ, this that surrounds the Virgin Mary. It is considered to be that almond-shaped frame. The Italian word for almond is mandorla. That almond-shaped frame depicts the integration and the holiness that is in that sacred space of where the shadow and the persona have been integrated. So if we go back to this, we see that almond-shaped image in the integration, in the depiction of the integration of the persona and the shadow. Now, were medieval theologians aware of Jungian psychology and the shadow and the persona? I don't know. I can't, I wasn't there, at least I don't remember being there. But the idea is that if we are considering the symbology of medieval Christianity as being a depiction of their understanding of where heaven is, not up there, but rather it is in here, as we have integrated those aspects of shadow that we have disowned, denied, ignored. And so in the depiction in the medieval art of the Christ being in this holy space, we can see that there is the possibility that, if I take the aspects of shadow that I no longer acknowledge, and I begin to reveal those aspects and own those aspects, I become more whole. I am less inclined to react negatively to some aspect of my experience that is part of my shadow. That if I'm able to encounter those aspects of my experience that previously would have been hot buttons for me, don't we all agree that that is demonstration of progress towards enlightenment, where we are no longer triggered by things that other people say, things that other people do, situations that arise in our lives? Last, I guess it was a week ago, it was a week ago. My beloved Z3, you know about my BMW Z3, the 1997 Roadster that Linda and I use as an escape vehicle from our cramped household of 7 people, 3 screaming kids. My daughter and her kids, her family, live downstairs. Actually, they live in the whole house except for our bedroom. But so we've got this Z3 Roadster about a year ago, and we've been using it as our escape vehicle. I sometimes call it my time machine because it makes me feel like I'm 25 again. But the last time we went up to Estes Park, coming back into town, I noticed that there was a noise in the transmission. So I took it in, and the dealer, BMW Gephardt up in Boulder, they've been servicing that car and our other X3, and they've been doing a good job at it. This Z3 has a problem that a new top was put on it, and the prior owner put a new top on it, and it didn't get the seal correctly adhered to the top, so that when the top comes on, there's a gap, just a small gap, right at the front of the window. And when it rains, water comes off the top and down into this gap, dripping down on the seats, puddling in the back of the seats. When I first discovered this, the prior owner had it in a garage, but we don't have a garage, so he did give us a car cover, but I found out that the car cover is not waterproof. So the first time I went out after a rainstorm, I found that, there were puddles in the seats, the passenger and driver seat. And in fact, the seats had been replaced by the prior owner as well. So so I cleaned that up, and I went down to the local store and got a shower curtain. And I put the shower curtain up over the roof, put the cover over that so that the shower curtain is held down by the cover. Wind blows, no problem, and it rains, the water goes off without dripping in the car. So anyway, I took the car in for repair. They said, well, what you're going to need is a dual weight flywheel. Uh-oh, that sounds expensive. Well, it turns out that they don't even have them in the U.S. They have to wait for it to come from Germany. So 2-week delay, I said, okay, you can keep the car there. Then when the snows were coming in last Friday, a week ago, I called up my service consultant and I told him, there was a car cover in the trunk of the car. You're going to need, if you're going to park that outside, you're going to need to put the car cover on it. And there's a shower curtain that's already folded or rolled into the cover. So when you unroll it, the shower curtain will be in the right place. Just make sure it's tied down and you'll be good. Well, I went down on Friday evening at about 8 o'clock. The snow and rain was coming in, the wind was howling, and there the Z3 was sitting, bright and red and uncovered. And so it was one of those, So I opened the car, and sure enough, there were puddles of water that were already accumulating. And challenges. One thing after another, challenges. So I called my service provider, my service consultant, and I asked him to explain to me why the Z3 was not covered. And he said, well, it was covered last week. I said, no, it wasn't. He says, well, when I left last Friday, it was good. I said, no, it wasn't. Don't lie to me. Well, lying is one of those aspects of a hot button of mine, right? I do not accept someone lying to me. Well, that, it turns out, is an aspect of my shadow. Why is it an aspect of my shadow? It's an aspect of my shadow because I have known that I have lied before. When I first got a job with IBM, I put on my resume that I had a bachelor's degree. Turns out that I was working at the IBM data center during my last 2 years of school, and my last semester of school, I flagged my cost accounting, I flagged my macroeconomics, and there was one other course that I had flunked. And I'd already been accepted into the sales force. I'd done an interview 2 months prior to graduation or my scheduled graduation. And so I did not want to say, oh, sorry, I know that I'm one of 30 people that's been hired this year. That was 1971, January of 71. I said, I know that I'm only one of 30 people that's been hired in IBM this year, in the IBM sales force. And so it's all good. I graduated, I have a bachelor's and so on. Well, that has bedeviled me for umpty-ump years. I finally accepted the fact that, well, yeah, okay, I screwed up. But the point is that instance of lying was one that I have shoved into my shadow. I don't think about it. I haven't thought about it except when I've had a job application. And that job application required that I submit a resume, right? And every time that I had a job application, I indicated that I had a bachelor's degree. Imagine. I don't have to imagine, I live it, but imagine the burden that I have been carrying. Now, that's not for you to have sympathy for me, but it's rather to reveal that this burden of lying was one that I shoved into the shadow to say, I don't lie, I've never lied, right? Except that I have. And it was a very significant lie that I told. And so that aspect of shadow is one that I'm still working on resolving because it comes up. It just came up. It was Thursday that the service consultant was out of the office ill for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So when he got back in on Thursday, I called him. And so I realized at that time, oh, yeah, that's something that is in my shadow, something that I need to work on. So as we work towards our healing, it is important for us to identify those hot buttons that we have, resolve those, and move on. And I'm in the process of working on that one. So this idea of integrating the shadow and the persona and owning those aspects of shadow, it is in that intersection where we are offered the opportunity to rise up, to lift ourselves into a greater awareness of who we really are. And when we can integrate shadow and persona completely, then we are open to lift into this state of enlightenment. But as long as we have aspects of shadow that we have not yet owned, then we are subject to judging others who may hit a hot button that is, in retrospect, I can see how he might have thought that when he left, it was covered because he told one of his very reliable guys to get it covered before you leave, get that car covered. I just got a call from David Ridge, and he told me that the cover's in the trunk, and he told me about. I can understand how he would say in his own mind, "Oh, it's covered." So that idea that the stuff out there that pushes our hot buttons identifies stuff in the shadow that we need to work on. All we have to do is be honest with ourselves about what it is that causes us concern, and then to find some aspect, or to accept that some aspect of our shadow that is being pressed by that event, by that relationship, by that behavior, is something to work on. So that's our process. Identify and then own. When I own, what I can do is I can declare, I am a liar. Whew, that hurts. I am a liar. 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 I'm a liar. I'm a liar. I am a liar. Accepting that aspect of shadow, owning that aspect of shadow to the point where that no longer holds a charge, allows me to encounter, I'm trusting, again, I'm still working on this. I'm trusting that if I have someone lie to me, it's no longer going to press my button. That's our opportunity. That's our charge. To accept and integrate all aspects of shadow into the persona so that we are an integrated whole. We'll have our meditation. As we come into our meditation, let us come in with I cast all my cares. With ourselves right now. As we look upon those experiences that we have had that have pressed our buttons, let us be absolutely forthright and acknowledge that they reveal something in me that needs to be healed. And it's not a matter of forgiving the other person for whatever they did, but rather it's about revealing for myself how I can move into a place, into a holy space, into a sacred space, where the events of my lives that are causing disruption and turmoil that I can move into that sacred space without that tribulation, without that pain, without that disruption of the awareness that I am one with all. I am that. I am. I am that over there. I am. I am that which caused me pain. I am that. I am. And in that process, in that healing process, I relieve myself of the burden, integrating that aspect of shadow that I have disowned, denied, ignored. I am that. I am. I am that which causes me pain. I am that which brings me joy. I am that which offers fulfillment. I am that which generates frustration. I am that. I am. Breathing into that. Allowing ourselves to be integrated, whole, healed. I am that. I am.